What's going on, everyone? Thanks for coming back for another episode of Terp Trends. Today we have the privilege of speaking with Erik Asher, a U.S. Army veteran whose journey is inspiring as it is transformative. From his time serving in Operation Desert Storm to overcoming his personal challenges, Erik has dedicated his life to advocacy, education, and empowerment. In this interview, we're going to explore how Erik's incredible path from soldier to advocate to educator and learn how he's turning his passion into purpose. Join us as we dive into his story of resilience, transformation, and unwavering commitment to making a difference. My man, thanks for coming on. I'm excited to release this episode. Enjoy. Remember, this is Terp Trends. Let's dive in.
How you doing, folks? My name's Erik Asher. I'm known on a lot of social media as Asher's Finest Rosin. That's my personal brand. I established that in 2018 when we got our first dispensaries here in Pennsylvania. I'm an advocate. I'm a disabled veteran. I advocate for both veteran access to cannabis here in PA and general advocacy for adult use and better laws here in PA.
Nice, man. And you definitely do. I'm sure everyone can attest to that. And mentioning the veteran status, I mean, let's start with the beginning. I think it's good to kind of paint a picture for how you got to where you are now and why you have so much passion behind it, right?
I came to Pittsburgh in 1988, December of 88, after working in California. California is where I'm from originally. I worked for the California Conservation Corps from 1986 to 1988. And I came to Pittsburgh looking for work as an electrician, which is what the state of California trained me to do. Unfortunately, there weren't any jobs available in Pittsburgh in 1988 if you weren't in a union.
Wow.
And I just so happened to run into an old friend that had just joined the National Guard. He was in his uniform and stuff. And I was this Spicoli looking kid with hair down to my waist. And I just, I was not a military guy at all, right? Hadn't even entered my mind. But talking to him, he said, "Hey, man, it's a job. You can maybe go see part of the world, get out of Pittsburgh." And I said, "Okay, I'll talk to a recruiter." And I took the ASVAB and I ended up joining the Army out of Pittsburgh. And I loved being in the Army. It was exactly what somebody in my position needed. I was a very wild child, very destructive. Got myself together right around age 18. And now I'm 20 and I'm going into basic training. Fort Sill, Oklahoma. So I finished basic and AIT, advanced individual training, and I went straight from there, straight to West Germany. This is back before the wall came down in Berlin. So June of 89, I end up in West Germany on my 21st birthday. And 3 months later, the wall came down. So I was there at a really cool time to be in Western Europe.
Yeah, monumental time.
Yeah, a lot of changes happening. I got to watch Germany reunite into one country in real time while I was paid to be there. Kind of fun.
That's kind of wild. That's something you definitely remember for sure.
Definitely. Have a piece of the wall I knocked off myself.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's crazy. So after that, where did it go from there?
Well, December of 90, we deployed to the Gulf for Desert Storm, or Desert Shield it was at the time. I was in field artillery. I ran a rocket launcher. I was part of a crew that ran multiple launch rocket system. It was a brand new weapon system at the time. It had never been used in combat. In fact, it had only been deployed to Europe for like 3 years. It was there to counter the Russians. It had never been tested, we had never been trained to fight in the desert, let's put it that way. So when we deployed down there, we had a steep learning curve. We had to adapt to the environment that we weren't used to. We had to adapt the vehicles to be able to operate in that environment on the fly. It was very challenging, but at the same time, it was kind of exciting. We were the first guys that might get to use this for real And that was exciting when you were used to just going and shooting training rockets at various places around Germany.
Yeah, I guess there is that side of excitement, that adrenaline hoorah side of the excitement, for sure. But in the overall picture, like, that's very intense and scary, man.
It
You
is.
know?
I will tell you that the scariest part of at least the war that I fought in was the chemical weapons exposures. We got hit with sarin gas, which is a nerve agent, among other chemical weapons that were employed down there. We got hit with a lot of chemical weapons residue because Air Force was bombing chemical munitions plants that we were downwind of. And then you had, after the fighting was over, because understand the ground fighting only took 4 days, okay, before there was a ceasefire. So it was over very quickly, but there was a lot of damage that we had to guard, like the burning oil fields. So we're guarding these oil fields, and the smoke is so thick you can't even see 5 feet in front of you during the middle of the day. So it was a very harsh environment. We got exposed to a lot of really nasty stuff. So while we didn't have IEDs to worry about or intense urban fighting like what happened in Iraq and Afghanistan after, a decade later, our war was very straightforward, but it involved chemical weapons and oil smoke and burn pits and all the things that just eat you up from the inside out. So all our damage is internal.
Oh man. And even in the midst of that, like, you don't have masks for that. You're not in thinking of anything like that. You know what I mean?
But that's not, that doesn't help you with a lot of the other exposures. No. But what was worse than that was somebody had to clean up all the dead bodies littering the streets in Kuwait City and stuff. And we got tapped to do stuff like that. And the fighting itself wasn't as traumatic as the things we were encountering afterwards. You would not imagine the horrendous things I've had to see and smell and things like that. It's very traumatizing in general. It makes it worse when you get back, only to realize that you can't continue doing your job because now your lungs don't work anymore like they should. So you can't pass your physical fitness test. So that happened to a lot of us at the end of that war.
And that definitely has to add to, like, challenges of phasing back into civilian life too.
It crushes you. It's like I look at it as like, okay, you know how a priest has a calling, or people say, hey, I was meant to be a fireman or a cop or whatever it is. High stress, high risk jobs like that. When that's taken away from you due to no fault of your own, it's hard to get over that. And the early part of the 90s, after I left active service at the end of 91, was very bad for me. Mental health wise, physically, the VA wasn't even set up to deal with these kinds of issues at the time. So they were just denying everybody's claims of disability. They weren't giving anybody any real help. They were just drugging everybody up with pharmaceuticals and trying to stave the worst problems off while telling you it's all in your head. Okay, so I applied for disability in 1992. I didn't get it until 2010. Okay, that's the sort of bureaucratic stuff. And a lot of guys die in the meantime. Okay, I almost took my own life in 1994. So I was almost one of those 22 a day. Ended up being homeless for a year here on the streets of Pittsburgh. Okay, I mean, these are the kind of things that happen when there's no resources allocated to help veterans. And I didn't know, that there was any help until probably right around 1995. There was a VA hospital up at Highland Drive that had a domiciliary, which helped homeless veterans rebuild their lives. And I was broken. And they picked up the pieces and helped me learn some coping skills and gave me a bunch of drugs, which was the problem. Because they give you drugs for your depression and sleep and pain, and all of a sudden you're like this zombie walking around, right? So I found at that time, once I got out of the domiciliary and I had I had reestablished myself as a productive member of society, driving a cab in Pittsburgh for a couple of years.
Okay.
I had a degree. I just never really successfully used it up until that time. I have a degree in business administration. So I ended up through the later part of the 90s managing hotels, commercial cleaning companies, security guard companies. I moved to Chicago for 9 months and ran a housekeeping crew at the largest hospital in Chicago.
Wow.
I was an assistant director for housekeeping for Point Park College before it became Point Park University. I did a lot of those things up until about 2003. And because I still wasn't getting the help that I really needed, I ended up being on disability through Social Security, which you barely survive. I ended up moving to Florida in 2004. I met somebody online and took my young son, and we moved to Florida. During that time, I had gotten off of disability and became a state correctional officer. So I was in law enforcement in Florida for about 5 years.
Oh, wow.
And in 2010, I got my disability from the VA. And it really changed my life. But at the same time, I was starting to really use cannabis more medicinally, even though I didn't understand it as a medicine at the time. It took the place of a lot of the medications that they had me on. I went from being on 20 medications to being on 5, and none of the
20.
mental health medications, correct. It
20
resolved a lot of
medications.
my diabetes problems and things like that. I'm not on insulin anymore. My mental health has gotten so much better. I wouldn't be able to, with my social anxieties and things like that, be able to go to public events and speak about this. But cannabis allows me to operate at what people would consider a normal sort of mode.
Yes.
Even though without it, I end up never leaving my house because I don't want to be in crowds of people that I don't understand what's going on. I don't go 100%. To 4th of July parades or anything like that. This was the first year I was in the Pittsburgh's Veterans Day parade. I drove in.
I saw that. Yeah.
So cannabis has saved my life. It gives me a quality of life I could not have otherwise. There's no pharmaceutical drugs that the VA ever gave me that helped more than they hurt with the side effects. So I decided to become a subject matter expert about this plant as a medicine and how to make the best solventless concentrates I could out of it. And that's when I established Asher's Finest Rosin in 2018. I decided that I was going to let people join me on my journey. So I started a YouTube channel. I got a Nug Smasher mini press, and I started doing exactly what I saw them doing on the videos. Use the same temperatures, the same thing. And I was pressing 8s of dry weed that I didn't understand rehydration or anything. But as I developed my process and my understanding of the plant better, I just found that I was really suited to it. And I love sharing the process with other people and showing that they can do it too. Taking it to the public and doing it. I was the first one in Pennsylvania ever allowed to demonstrate this in a public venue. Okay, so I went out and did it before I even knew it was legal because I felt so impassioned about this plan and about showing how you can make better medicine from it. At the prices people were paying at the time when Pennsylvania's program first started in 2016, we didn't even have dispensaries until 2018. And when we did, all you could get were cartridges, and there was no flour available because flour wasn't even legal back then. But the minute it was, 6 months into the program, I started buying a lira, and I was just crushing these. I was getting terrible yields, and I couldn't understand why. And I started talking to people who've been doing it longer, and I got some great advice, and I started getting really, really good at this. And I love being able to teach it to other people. So when the opportunities started presenting themselves to do this in other public venues, convention centers, festivals, I just took it on the road. And it got very, very popular. One time I had an Instagram channel that had 26,000 followers. and they took it down. And I never sold anything. I never did this to sell. All I'm doing is showing people how to do it. And if a patient brings me their flower, I would process it for them for free. That's always been what I've done. I've never charged a patient to do what I do.
Yeah.
Growers will come to me and want me to do this for them as well, because it's a really easy way to determine the quality of your product without having to commit to washing a bunch of it first. So
fire in, fire out. That's what they say.
Exactly. Yep. And I just love the transformative process of taking buds and squishing them, and gold comes out. It just it's alchemy.
It's pretty mesmerizing. Yeah, it is. It is. It's pure alchemy right in front of your eyes.
It gets in your blood. It does, and you get addicted to wanting to see bigger and better yields. It culminated in 2019 when I went to the Cannabis Cup up in Detroit. This is when it was still just medical there. It wasn't recreational yet. And I bought some flower. It was my first time there buying flower at a dispensary that wasn't a medical dispensary, right?
Yes.
I use my medical card. I go into Reef Dispensary and I get a quarter of this stuff called Wonka bars. It's like 30% THC flower, which was huge at the time.
Yeah.
Went back to the hotel, made a video, pressed an eighth of it on video, got 1.53 grams of concentrate out of it. The largest single flower rosin yield percentage ever recorded. That got me invited out to the West Coast, to the Emerald Cup. But then COVID happened, and I didn't get a chance to do that.
Oh, man.
And COVID did a lot of bad things. Okay, it did some good things to the program, but a lot of bad things. During COVID, they did things like let you go to get your recertifications done on video, right?
Yeah.
Don't have to go to a doctor's office now. And they don't have a limit on what a 30-day supply of medication is. So you can buy pretty much as you care to medicate. But what they also did was allow out-of-state companies, multi-state operators, to swoop in under Act 44 of 2021 and basically buy out the entire supply chain within 18 months. So now it doesn't matter what the name of the dispensary is that you go to, the brand that you buy, except for Penn Health Group, which is the only independent, still Pennsylvania owned and operated company I'm aware of. The rest of them are all owned by one of 4 MSOs. Okay, so whether you're buying grassroots, whether you're buying Prime, doesn't matter what the brand is. You're buying from one of 4 companies. Doesn't matter what dispensary you go in. You're buying from one of 4 companies. And they're the same 4 companies that tried to legalize weed down in Florida just recently. Amendment 3 failed because they didn't allow home grow. See, that's the big problem here. They don't want to let people grow this plant at home, and almost every other state does. What's handicapping Pennsylvanians from getting the legislature to heel to their demands is that we live in a commonwealth, and our state constitution specifically prohibits voter-initiated binding referendums, which is how almost every other state, including Ohio, just got legalized. They went out and got signatures from enough voters to put a referendum on a ballot, and the voters decided. And the state house has to comply, which is how Ohio just legalized last year. We need to do that, but in order to do that, we have to get a lawyer that has the balls to go up against the state and get it struck down as unconstitutional, because it is. We don't have the same rights that people in other states have to make our legislature abide by the will of the voters. It's been polling here for over 5 years, 70% and above, that have wanted legalized adult use cannabis. And the legislature keeps dropping the ball on it because they've been basically bought and paid for by those 4 MSOs. When they were allowed to come in, a lot of dark money paid a lot of key people in key positions in the state government. And that's why we still, 8 years in, do not have home grow. We don't have DUI protections. We don't have adult use public consumption laws. We don't have any of that. Nobody's going to want to come here and spend their money here on vacation if they're cannabis people and they can't access it here. So
100%.
they've been shooting themselves in the foot since 2018 when DePasquale did that 14-page report telling them they needed to be the first ones to legalize recreational. And then they went and let New Jersey do it.
Everyone else do it, yeah.
And now everybody else except for West Virginia and us, we're this turd in a punch bowl of opportunity.
That's it.
Because all the other states have come to their senses to one degree or another. Michigan stands out, though, as the best. They have the largest cannabis market in the country. They beat California last year. People travel from Western PA there to medicate.
Oh, yeah.
They just do. It's worth it. Ohio's not going to be competitive for probably at least 5 years.
I just don't understand, like, we have all the evidence financially in other states that have already paved this path on what it can do for your state, for the people in your state. And it's all positive. Like, you can just put so much money back, especially in an era where everybody's just in so much debt, including states and countries. It's like, why would you not take the green way and get your way out of it and give the people what you want? I mean, that's the whole point of this society, is the power to the people. And why are we, what happened?
I think the biggest part of the problem in Pennsylvania is the same problem that we have politically, and that's outside of the enclaves of Pittsburgh on the west and Philly on the east. The rest of the state votes against their own best interest on an almost constant basis. Okay, they could have had this legalized a long time ago, and the polling shows that all but 2 counties wanted this legal for adult use. But the legislators aren't responsive because they don't have to be in a state where you can't get enough signatures to bypass them. So I really think if we want to solve the problems here, we want to get adult use and home grow and public consumption. We need to get that prohibition struck down as unconstitutional. That's step one. Once we do that, then we can get the signatures needed and force the state legislature to heal, which is all we need. We could have had weed 5 years ago. We could have had legal cannabis 5 years ago if we had had the ability to get the signatures and force them to do it. That's the biggest handicap we have, and Pennsylvania is going to be a second-rate cannabis state until that changes. People will go to New York, they'll go to Maryland, they'll go to Michigan, soon to be more Ohio. It's going to drain not just financial resources from Pennsylvania because people aren't going to want to be tourists here. No. But we're going to lose our best and brightest entrepreneurial people who want to make a name in cannabis. They're going to be going to these other states where there's more favorable opportunities. The only way Pennsylvania even has a chance is if we can get that thing struck down and get a voter-initiated referendum going. I truly believe that. That's what I've been dealing with, because I had to put all my consulting and stuff that I was doing on a hold, because I was doing a lot of stuff with hemp, and a lot of people are phasing into wanting other consulting advice, and it kind of puts you in an area, of it does. I want to help you, and this is my true passion, but here I am living in a state where I could get in a lot of trouble if I'm even associated with anything you guys are doing. And then it kind of forces my hand to not really turn a blind eye to it. But now it's like I'm losing business because now I can't help these people, or I'm going to have to force myself to move to another state, which I don't want to do because I enjoy Pennsylvania. I have high hopes for PA cannabis, especially someone who's been in the program since it started. It hurts because we've been advocating for so long, and we just never get anywhere. We keep running up to Harrisburg and screaming and taking our signs and shaking the hands of these legislators who are going to look in your face and smile and are lying to you about the entire thing, about what they're going to vote for. Sharif Street's one that just has stabbed us in the back multiple times. I do not like what the man stands for anymore. He plays himself as an advocate, but then he kills his own bills. It's so corrupt. And the only way to cut through the corruption that has occurred here is to make them come to heel. If we can find a lawyer, that's all it's going to take, is find one decent constitutional lawyer. because on its face, that prohibition is unconstitutional. It shouldn't be that hard of a fight to get it struck down. At the state Supreme Court level, for sure.
Yeah.
You know,
maybe that's
if you
the new
know any
mission.
lawyers, man,
I'm about to start digging.
Talk to them. I keep talking
I
to
know
ones
some,
out here,
but not on that level, unfortunately. But maybe they could plug us to someone that will. It stinks because even like the Secretary of Agriculture, he came out to my hemp fields and he was like stoked with the hemp program, stoked with the medical program, and he was like excited. And then that was 2018, 2019, and here we are sitting 5 years later, and still nothing changed. And it's hard to get a hold of that man.
Yeah, we're still at the mercy of any cop that pulls us over.
I know.
You know what I mean? The whole thing is just ridiculous.
Yeah, it sketches me out. I'm sure it sketches everyone else out that's in the same pedangle. Even with a med card, you're still like, well, this thing, it doesn't really protect me. I can walk into these stores and I can get it, but other than that, like, I'm still at the mercy of the person.
I vote with my wallet, brother. I drive 4 hours to Michigan to medicate because I can't get either the urea products, the quality level of products,
or just the pricing.
Price point.
Yeah,
I mean, we're talking gummies that are a tenth of what they cost here. We're talking.
Yeah. Oh, I know. It's insane.
I'm a hash rosin guy, so I'm not paying $80 a gram for hash rosin.
No,
it's not going to do it.
No.
I can get it for a quarter that price or less in Michigan. So it's. And now that Ohio has legalized, there's really not a lot of intensity as far as enforcement unless they catch you moving a lot of weight. If you're just carrying personal use amounts, don't give a damn about that. They don't.
Yeah.
So I don't. I don't go and do something that's going to risk my future. But I'm not going to continue helping a system that is not responsive to us as medical patients here. You know?
Yeah. What do you so we got into all this, and so you went from flour and then got really heavy into solventless, right? Do you remember your first time? Like, what was your inspiration with hash, or what did hash inspire you? Because
the first time
I'm listening to it, and I was like, through all this, like it's not common for a person to just jump from flour and stuff just right into concentrates, and then being like a I'm trying to think of the word, but then just jumping right into solventless and then mastering it like you did. So what was that inspiration behind hash?
Okay, I can tell you. I started smoking flower when I was very, very young. Okay, I hesitate almost to say, but I smoked weed the first time in 1975. I was 7.
Wow.
My parents were both hippies, so I had always had it around me my whole life. But
especially with California,
really didn't stop smoking it very much until I got out of. When I got back from the Gulf, my lungs were pretty damaged. It's very hard for me to smoke flower. Okay.
Yeah.
And it was out of that sort of necessity that I started seeing concentrates on YouTube back in the day. Right. And it was all BHO at the time. And I was watching that, and I knew about hash, smoking hash, because I bought a shit ton of that in Europe. Right. But
that's what I figured your inspiration came from. But I knew you were across
seas. As far as dabs goes, I watched people while I was in Florida wearing a badge. I was watching YouTube videos of people making BHO, and then I started seeing rosin presses right around 2010. Is when you started seeing actual rosin presses being promoted.
The small nug smashers,
right.
Mm-hmm.
So it was right around that time I started seeing that solventless seemed to be a much less processed form, which leaves it more medicinally valuable. See, this is sort of a spectrum to me. On the one end, you've got the medicinal side, which is the plant itself, and hash and flower rosin, and maybe RSO. Those are full spectrum concentrates and cannabis products that have full medicinal value. But the more you process it beyond that, in my opinion, the less medicinally valuable it becomes. It becomes 100%. More recreational. So when you start getting into BHO, I don't even consider BHO medicine. I consider that a recreational product that Pennsylvania sells as medicine. And the further along you get, when you get into isolates and diamonds and all that crap, that's completely devoid of medicinal value as far as I'm concerned. Okay, because if you're using it as a medicine, you need the full spectrum that plant is trying to express as a medicine. That's the whole point of medicinal versus recreation. So I don't like the way they market things in Pennsylvania anyway, but at least in Michigan, they're straight up about it. It's all recreational all the time. But you can access higher levels of quality in their recreational products than you can here in our medicinal in a lot of cases. So I love solventless because my lungs can't take the smoke. I can't take combustion anymore. I stopped smoking cigarettes. I even stopped vaping tobacco a while ago. But I need enough cannabinoids in my body to be able to function and fight off the things that are eating me alive. And I found that the best tool for that for me is hash rosin or flower rosin, full spectrum solventless concentrates that I can dab in an e-rig. I don't even do torches and bangers or any of that very much. I like e-rigs. They're easy to use, they're easy to maintain, and they're very precise on their temperature. So you set it and then just let it run, and it keeps it where you want it to be.
With have you noticed have you noticed a difference in texture when you have like the flower rosin compared to the hash rosin? So for people that don't maybe they're not familiar with the two differences and you just hear rosin. So flower rosin is going to be directly pressed with the flower in the micron bag with the press, and you're going to get basically the trichomes and everything is going to be excreted into this gold lovely alchemy. And then hash rosin is actually when you're dry sifting or you're using these bubble bags, you're creating these different micron levels of hash. You sift that down and then you put that in the same style bag you would with the flour and you press it the same way and it just gives you a different consistency. And that's the quickest breakdown for rosin.
It gives you a clean taste profile. And that's when you're talking about flower rosin versus hash rosin, okay? They're both medicinally full spectrum on paper. There's a little less full spectrum with washing it because you're stratifying the trichome heads. Okay, but I still consider it a full spectrum medicine as much as flower rosin. The big difference is with hash rosin, it lends itself more to commercial processes and larger batches because you can wash a large amount of it at one time. And then run it through the bags. But then you have to go through the process of drying it, microplaning it before you turn it into rosin. Okay, so there's all those extra steps and extra time, which is why hash rosin commands a higher price in the market because there's a lot more work involved. Plus, you have stratifications that lend themselves to being full melt. There's a lot of, even among hash rosin, there's a lot of stratifications in quality. And there's people that are willing to pay a lot of money for those really higher end things. But for somebody who is more of a medical patient who's on a fixed income like I am, can't afford to spend $110 a gram for some of that super heady, high end stuff. Making it directly from flower, single stage solventless is a term I coined to differentiate between flower rosin and hash rosin, because flower rosin gets a bad reputation by people who are hash people because it doesn't taste quite as clean as hash rosin does. However, I'm just approaching this from the opposite end. You're using cold and wet to separate the trichomes. I'm using just the heat and pressure to melt them out and sift them. We melt them through the same micron bags. When they're rosin, they're rosin. And as far as the consistency of it, that has almost everything to do with the genetics of the plant that you're pressing or that you're washing to begin with. Has nothing to do with the process itself. If you're consistent in your process, you'll get consistent results. But we're always dealing with a plant that's different, strain to strain, batch to batch, pheno to pheno. So you could press the same strain of plant at different times, months apart, and get wildly different results, depending on the pheno, depending on variations that happen to growers. I'm not versed as a grower. Never have been. I've grown one plant my whole life. I am a processor. I take people's best work and I get the best that plant has to offer medicinal.
Yes.
I've never considered myself a recreational producer. I'm a small batch processor who processes medicinal solventless concentrate for patients. And it's not a business because I don't really make money at it. It's a calling. It's an outreach, an educational outreach.
100%.
But
Now,
it's
can
very
you tell?
satisfying. It's very satisfying.
Oh, yeah. And now, just with you and your lungs and what you can intake, can you tell the differences between those two? Like, do they affect you differently at all? Flower rosin compared to hash rosin, for just like the properties that each one are different?
As far as medicinally, not very much. As far as taste and harshness, flower rosin is admittedly not quite as tasty and smooth as hash rosin is, but there's such a thing as utility grade. Okay, and that's for daily driving, for daily medicinal use. It's absolutely fine. I love making flower rosin, even though I can afford to buy hash rosin. I will sometimes still. I like taking flower and I like squishing it into gold. It's just that process to me is near and dear to my heart, and I probably will never stop making flower rosin, even if it's only for me, because I'm not making rosin to sell to people. I'm making rosin for people who need better medicine from strains they can't get in concentrate form at their dispensary. So they're bringing me dispensary flower, and I'm trying to get the best I can out of it for them. I don't charge them for that. They already overpaid for the flower in the first place. Why am I going to add even more cost to that when they're the people who can least afford it? The people that I've only ever charged to are growers. Growers who bring me a quarter pound or a couple of pounds they want turned into rosin. I charge them for that because it's not
a processing fee. That's different than taking in your neighbor.
And it's not exorbitant, but it is what it is, and it doesn't really make me money as much as it kind of subsidizes me doing it for patients for free, because the bags cost money, the electricity, the equipment, my investment in my time, all of that has a value to it. And since I don't charge patients, I couldn't sustain it coming out of pocket completely. So the few growers that do come, they pay, but
Shout out
patients
those growers.
never have and never will.
Yeah, that's powerful. I hope more individuals, as this program progresses and we find more of our niches, take on that approach.
I'm not going to lie to you. I really think that the medical program as it stands right now has a very limited life cycle. I think that eventually we're going to have quasi-legalization. And when I say quasi, I mean something that looks a lot like New Jersey, where they don't have home grow rights, but you do have the right to go down to their dispensaries and you can pay exorbitant prices for whatever pretty much that you want. The medical program is going to die on the vine, because that's what happened in Michigan. They had them both, right? Coexisting. But then the menu for the medical side started to drop. The amount of things you could buy and things like that, because as more people realized they didn't need a medical card to get the products, they stopped getting medical cards. That's going to happen in Pennsylvania. You need to just realize that that's going to be the reality. It's just the time frame that we're looking at is so exaggerated, because we can't make our state legislature move in the direction we've wanted them to. We're still going to be the worst place for cannabis in this region for probably the next 10 years. I don't see that changing.
I hope in 2025 we can change. I know New York's like making good headlines. New York's throwing a lot of good events. So is Jersey. I'd really like to see. We just have cool places in PA. I'd really like to see. And I know a lot of really talented people in PA, man, that I would love to have them shine.
I know almost every marquee grower in Pennsylvania, at least in Western PA, has come through my studio. So I'm well aware there's some very good talent out here, and there's some great hash makers out here too.
Fantastic hash makers,
and Sky High solventless. These are guys I've been knowing for years now. I'm not a heady hash maker. I'm a medicinal flower rosin producer, but I was the first one ever to do it, take it to the people. Nobody else is doing this like I do.
No.
Nobody else is going to these events and crushing for people for free like I do. I do it
No.
because I love this plant and I love how it can improve people's lives. And I am more than happy to go out and do this, even though I'm out of pocket sometimes, because I think it's
Yeah.
important. If you can change one person's mind, somebody who's not a cannabis person, okay, because when you're at a cannabis event, you're preaching to the choir already. But when
100%.
I go and do a wellness event that isn't a cannabis
Yeah.
necessarily centric event, oh my
Hmm.
God, when you reach somebody who believes all this bullshit about cannabis and you're able to not only show them, but explain to them where that came from and that light bulb moment they have, now you've
Yeah.
changed somebody's mind. See, that
Oh,
person
100%.
votes. So,
Hmm.
it's that snowball effect. That's why I'm out there doing this. People tell me I'm
Yeah.
crazy for not trying to open up a business. But the whole thing was I never wanted this to be a business. I wanted to be an impartial advocate and a good source of information. And I can't do that if I have a profit motive, right?
100%.
I'm not
Yes.
begrudging people making money. I think that it's important that we have entrepreneurs in the cannabis space, but I think it's also equally important that people are out there just helping people because not everybody can afford to be in business, you know?
And that's basic. The foundations of this plant is a community and a societal plant. So to put it into different pillars, I mean, the last guy I had on, Terrence White, he kept hitting a quote that just rings in my head: is cannabis has no face. Like it has, it's everywhere. Every person and everything can as adapted to cannabis in a way. Black, white, Filipino, Hispanic, all
Absolutely.
these things. Cannabis has no face. It's everywhere. So we need to have more of a community side of things, because I've been seeing more of like an ego business driven side of cannabis. I think is more on like the headlines,
Yeah.
and we need to
Yeah.
change it more to the faceless community aspect in a positive way. And that's the only way we're going to get those people to click, to understand that these stigmas and these taboos that we have around this plant maybe aren't true. And that, just because people like you and I use this plant, we're not criminals. We're not villains. We don't think crazy things. We're just normal people trying to get our lives to feel a little better daily by using something that's more spiritual and holistic than trying to take 20 medications a day.
Well, I can
You
also
know?
tell you that from my standpoint, a lot of the guys I served with, okay, in that
Yeah.
war, are dying very quickly, and they're dying from all sorts of really aggressive cancers related to the environmental stuff that we were exposed to. Guess who doesn't have those? The guys who I partied with at the unit where we were all hash smokers. We weren't the
Yeah.
big drinkers. The big drinkers are the ones that are dropping right now. Guys my age, 56 years old, are dropping dead
Yeah.
of pancreatitis, pancreatic cancer, brain cancer, lung cancer, all sorts of shit. I don't have any of that. And I haven't stopped using cannabis. That's the one thing my other friends and I who haven't gotten any of these diseases, we're still on the cannabis train. So
Yeah.
I can tell you it is keeping us alive. It
Yeah.
truly is. And I have seen it. I've seen it in Florida. People use it on melanoma on a topical basis and
Hmm.
also eating like RSO. It
Yep.
clears it up completely. I mean, cures,
Yeah.
no chemo, none of that stuff. And they don't have to be digging divots out of their arms and off their faces.
No.
I saw a bunch of that in Florida. But
Yeah.
people are getting hip to RSO as a treatment for that. And they're stopping poisoning their bodies with chemo now. So
Yeah.
there's a lot more. This is just the tip of the iceberg because it's been buried under 80 years of bullshit. This was in
Yeah.
the pharmacopoeia up until 1937. You could go into a pharmacy anywhere in the country and get a tincture of cannabis for your menstrual cramps, for
Yep.
your consumption disease, which is a lung thing. Just all of that went away in 37. We're just getting back to understanding it again, and all that knowledge that has been buried and distorted and lied about is finally peeking through, and people
Yeah.
are starting to have a renaissance now. It's just, can we get it done at the federal level? Who knows? Every president in the last 4 elections says that they planned on decriminalizing it at the federal level or descheduling it at the federal level. I look at actions. I don't believe anything they say anymore. So
no, yeah. I mean, that's all you can do is hold
it
them
may
to
be
their
a long
actions.
road. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I hope not, man. I hope not. Well, what about the future for your branding and everything you've been advocating? You have anything coming up?
Well, I can tell you this. When I first started my brand, I had very grand ideas on how I was going to eventually monetize it. And then I was going to use 100% of the proceeds to build housing for homeless veterans because that's what I started the brand to do, not to get rich.
Yeah,
However, because I never really set out to make a lot of money, I have ideas but no money to make it happen. So I've been pitching the ideas to people that may be able to take them up and move with them. Like
yeah,
instead of trying to build a bunch of tiny homes in a place people don't want them to be, which has been
hmm,
the problem in getting these things done, how about we get some of these old motels and motor lodges that shut down during COVID and never came back? Those are
yeah,
basically almost one-room apartments. You put a kitchenette in one of those, you got a one-room apartment. Well, now you got 100 of them in one spot. You could fill
yeah,
those up with veterans that have been pre-screened for mental health and drug addiction. Make sure they've got a nice base to be able to start from. Bring the resources to them. That's
yeah,
what I'm trying to do. The future of Asher's Finest is trying to ensure that we have as many veterans getting help as possible and getting them off the streets because
wow,
the VA helped me and got me off the street when I needed it.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, you're the man to do it. You know.
I'm trying, man, but I'm getting older and it gets harder every year. Okay, I've got really bad chronic fatigue syndrome. Okay, it's part of what's all going on with the inside of me. So every year it gets harder to physically just go out and do all these events or to travel like I do. I do it because again, I really am passionate and I think it's important. But it eventually I'm going to get to the point where I'm not going to be as mobile,
Yeah,
anymore.
yeah.
I'm trying to do as much as I can while I'm still as capable as possible.
I gotcha. Do you go out to any of events or sessions that I see keep popping up around?
Well, the Pittsburgh Cannabis Fest in August is an event that I brought that's here because I advocated for it to be here. The Steel City
Nice.
Cannabis Convention used to be a different event that was more of a wellness convention, but they found that making it a cannabis convention and co-hosting it with a reptile convention makes for a real interesting time. So
Yeah.
twice a year, I get to go to the Monroeville Convention Center for a weekend and just press rosin and talk about this plant, and we do dabs, and it's a whole lot of fun. It's a
Oh,
very
that's awesome.
permissible environment. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. And inviting too, you know?
Absolutely. I love going
So,
out and showing this to people.
yeah, man. Yeah. So wrapping up here,
Yes, sir.
thank you again, for doing this, and being on. I think people like you are more reason on why I'm trying to give a platform to just talk about the non-heady language of cannabis and things like
Yeah.
that.
Well, like I said, man, the political end of this is what I feel is really holding us back. And if we can get that prohibition knocked down as unconstitutional, it's going to open us up to prosperity, the likes of which I don't think we could even imagine right now. So
Yeah.
if there's anything people take away from this, if you know a lawyer or you are a lawyer that can go to the state Supreme Court and get this prohibition struck down, you would be the hero in the cannabis space in this state. You go down in history.
Yeah.
Let's
Yeah.
see if we can make that happen in 2025. I would
That'd
really
be
like
great.
to see us get the ability to make the state house conform to our wishes for once. you know,
Yeah. 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 Legality over growing a plant is kind of crazy. Like, that's not really freedom if you can't grow a plant.
that's why I don't consider places like New Jersey to be completely legal. I call it quasi legalization because it's not
Yeah.
true legalization if I got to worry about the cops kicking my door down because I'm growing 6 plants in my house. It's
Yeah.
ridiculous.
It's crazy. It's
Yeah.
crazy. What advice, so obviously we have a lot of people that transition into civilian life and
Sure.
veterans, of course, maybe that are deciding to dabble into cannabinoids and stuff like that. What advice do you have for anybody trying to get into that and, seek a healthier solution to their mental health?
I would say that the first thing you're going to want to probably do is connect with people on social media through Facebook or Instagram. There's a lot of groups, local cannabis veterans groups. I actually run one for Pittsburgh um, that you can post questions to. We could set up meetups or even meet individually. If there's questions you have or just you want to be able to talk about something in more of a private setting. I always open my studio to that for patients. I always try to have a safe, secure environment for people to come in, medicate, talk about what they need to, or learn whatever they need to learn. I've been doing that a long, long time. I would suggest that you try and reach out to somebody locally if you can.
Cool. Cool. And how can people find you? Social
Well,
medias or
I'm on Facebook under Erik Asher. I'm under Instagram as Asher's underscore finest underscore rosin underscore 412. I'm also on LinkedIn as Asher's finest rosin. Um, I'm not on TikTok or Snapchat or any of that
yeah,
stuff. I just stick to Instagram and Facebook and YouTube, of course. My YouTube channel,
nice.
AFR underscore PGH is
Sweet.
my channel. Um, I've been posting videos since 2018. I've got almost 900 videos about making rosin and reviews of different equipment that I've used over the years. Um, it's a good resource. And of
Cool.
course, I'm always open. If you're in the Pittsburgh area uh, and you want to come over and have some flower pressed into rosin, I'm in Penn Hills, 10 minutes from downtown. Hit me up on through Instagram or Messenger or something like that, and I can get you an appointment set up. No problem at all.
That's awesome. That's awesome, man.
Thanks for having me on, brother. I really appreciate it.
Um,